Welcome to the Healthcare IT Today CIO podcast. I'm John Lynn, the founder and chief editor at Healthcare IT Today, and I'm excited to bring you the most practical healthcare CIO insights and perspectives. We know your job is challenging, and we want to help you be more successful. And today's guest is Francois Bodhuin. He's AVP and CISO at Inspira Health. Welcome, Francois.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I guess I should have said bonjour, Francois.
I will say bonjour back at you.
Oh, nice. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and Inspira Health.
Yes, Inspira Health, we're a hospital system in southern New Jersey. We cover 5 counties. We have 3 acute care facilities and probably 150 to 200 access points. Covering from physicians' offices to imaging centers, et cetera, urgent cares and all that. Personally, I've been in the United States for 40 some years. I come from France, as if you couldn't tell. And
Awesome.
yeah, I got here and just didn't want to go back, so I stayed in the States. I love it here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm excited to learn about your approach to security at Inspira Health. So as you look at it, what do you see are some of the biggest challenges that health systems are facing today when it comes to cybersecurity?
So the thing I'm struggling with right now is the lack of resource. It's difficult to get any kind of qualified participants or employees to work in InfoSec. You can get starting level, but as soon as you want to go up 1 level or 2, it becomes a little difficult. So we deal with that going with staffing companies. Obviously, we don't get enough people applying for the positions on our website yet. Besides that, healthcare is a much bigger target than it used to be. It's the example is the credit card. The cost of a credit card on the dark web is the credit card number is a few cents, and the cost of a medical record is about $40 to $50 on the dark web. So that's that makes it a bigger target, a much bigger target, more profitable for the bad guys. And then the other thing is, the weakest point is always the user.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in healthcare, our nature as healthcare providers is to provide help. So if you're calling me and you're asking me for my help, I'm going to listen. I'm going to try to give you as much help as I can, which is great, except that if you're a bad guy, you're asking for help, usually it's not going to go very well. Yeah. So on the security awareness side, it's pretty challenging.
Yeah, no, I mean, to your point, I think everyone's facing workforce challenges. Cybersecurity is such demand, right? I think that's a problem. Even when you have the budget to hire someone, you can't find them. It's a big challenge. On the second point, it's also interesting, the ransomware side of it, right? Where it's almost criminal to not pay the ransomware to try to get back so you can take care of the patients, because lives are literally at stake, and yet paying it doesn't necessarily actually solve the problem, right? So that's, I think, even a complicated thing. And then to your point, I heard one health system CIO say, I think it was CIO or CISO, I can't remember. I'm worried about my 21,000 points of vulnerability, which was their 21,000 staff people, right? Which is hard to manage. I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, ransomware. Yeah, that's it. It's definitely one thing. On top of that, it can be illegal to pay the ransom. If the ransomware attack comes from North Korea, for example, the FBI already does not want you to pay the ransom.
Sure.
But that kind of nation state, that makes it completely illegal to pay the ransom. So now you already have a problem, right?
Yeah. So what are you doing to address these challenges? Like in the workforce, are you looking to outsource more just because you can't find the talent, or, and how are you, are you educating your staff? What are some of the things you're doing to address these
Yeah,
challenges?
so that's really a good point. I'm very big into mentoring my staff, but certainly education is a very important part of what we do. I send them to conferences. I want them to participate into professional organizations. You name it. There are so many out there. So
Yeah.
I actually put down on their evaluation that to make sure that they do participate, they go to meetings, and they bring things back to us because it expands their field of vision. Yeah, I think that's to me that's really important to get people they hear from someone else who has the same problems and maybe a different approach, right?
Mhm.
So that's definitely something we do.
I call that truth in employee reviews. Once it's on their job description and part of their review, they actually do it. So I think there's a
Yes,
lesson there.
yes. I also ask them to work on certifications, and because I'm pretty big on that. It's nice to have a college degree. It just shows me what you can do, potential. But certification means you've been exposed to some of those things, and to me that's pretty important, and that's on the job descriptions. And then the last thing is I'm pushing my employees to go out and speak to
Mm.
conferences or to present our program or present their ideas, because when you speak, you really have to work on what you're going to speak about, and it just hones their skills a little better. So
Yeah, that's actually a great example, right? If you want to
mhm.
prove you know it, you write something about it or speak about it, and you it
Yep.
forces you to dive deep into it. That's great. Another thing I hear a lot from healthcare organizations is talking about third-party risk. And, as we're connecting every health system, where, every healthcare technology, we're implementing a lot of those systems, you start to worry about third-party risk. And, we saw that with the Cronus ransomware, for example. How are
Totally.
you approaching cybersecurity when it comes to this like third-party risk?
Well, we have a vendor security management program in place that starts from the onboarding of the vendor, where we we pretty much evaluate their security program. We have a few chosen questions that kind of tells us if they know what they're doing or not,
Right.
or that tweet InfoSec seriously, and you can tell fairly quickly if they do, if they don't.
Right.
For example, do they have a CISO? Well, if they don't have a CISO, there's
That's
a
a good
sign like,
indication.
hello. So we do that. We evaluate them. We classify them from low to medium to high risk, and then that will high risk. For example, we change our limit of liability on our BA, or that kind of thing, and actually we give them remediations on the things that make them high risk, and
Mm.
we try to make them make those vendors comply so that we don't have to worry about them.
So are you doing this with a bunch of Excel documents like some organizations? Are you
No,
using a software? How are you approaching it?
yeah, we're using software. It is managed by most of the work is done by a third party, but they're using software that we have. It's a GRC software that we use that works very well. It includes the assessment and the responses to the questions and all that, and we can review all that and evaluate the risk category of where the vendors are.
Gotcha. I think the
Yeah.
other challenge is you do it once, but then like a year later, are they still compliant? Or do you
Yep.
incorporate that into your process, or how are you approaching
Yep.
kind of the ongoing fact that cybersecurity changes quickly?
Right. So depending on their risk category, we either resurvey the vendors once a year if they're high risk, or every 3 years when they're low risk.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you have any tips for getting leadership on board? I mean, do you use some of this software to do it, to kind of, get the backing? I think that's the other challenge, is many leaders don't understand. I think it's changing thanks to all the
Yeah.
incidents, which is a sad thing to say, thanks to all the incidents. But, any tips on getting leadership on board?
Yeah, actually, I do. I have a great tip, which is involve them into your IR test.
Mm,
If you do an incident, if you test your incident response program, get the executives in a room and do an exercise with them, and then do it with your technology team, of course, but do it with the executives, and you're actually surprised. I mean, they're right on the money. My executives react extremely well to all. We did two this year, and they were right on point for everything. And another tip that is really interesting is the second exercise we did was at no cost. We got a cyber insurance company to hold that for us.
okay.
And when it came time to renew, they were pretty happy with us because they knew we were doing those exercises, and they see this as a good thing that we're doing for our program,
Yeah. I actually thought what you were saying, to get them involved, you should send a phishing attack to them, a fake one,
Oh,
which
we
I
do
think
that.
probably would work as well.
Well, no, we do that, but the phishing is it's very it goes very, very quickly. If you fall for it, you go through the training program and that's it, and then you move on. The exercise really, to me, is the best way, because they're really getting involved. Plus, they're all together in the same room. It's not a personal thing; it's a team effort,
Right.
and they build even more on that. So, yeah.
Well, I imagine they're going through scenarios in their head. Oh, what else would this mean for the business, and what else would this mean for the PR? And so then it changes their perspective. Is that the idea?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, when we did the first exercise, the board was involved. So the
Okay.
board was before the exercise. Then we did the exercise with the executives. And at the end, we called the board back to give them an update on everything that we had decided. And so, yeah, there's a strong influence of the business. Obviously, we have to align everything we do to the business. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I think that we've seen a shift, from security, which, before was like, do I do a firewall? Do I change networks, et cetera, antivirus, to now looking at things like disaster recovery and business continuity and the impact that a cybersecurity disaster can have. How are you looking at that and approaching the disaster recovery and business continuity?
Yeah. So the first thing we do is we do a business impact analysis, BIA. We do that. That allows us to define our business continuity plan. And then from there, we go to the disaster recovery, which is the second part of, getting back on our feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last is the testing of the incident response. So there's really four components that you can't forget. You can't forget any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the business impact analysis, it allows us to classify, for example, let's take an example of servers, to recover our servers. If we had a disaster, we lost the data center for whatever reason. We've classified all our servers in tiers. The first tier being, believe it or not, it's the infrastructure servers, because without them, we can't get back to work. Yep. But after that, we've defined that there are systems that are more, that we should prioritize more than others to get back. The archival system is certainly a tier 2 or tier 3. It's not going to be a tier 1 where we need the system to get back and treat patients, for example. So that we tier those servers, and it kind of gives us our methodology on how to get our environment back together.
Interesting. I think that's something that people forget about, maybe because in other areas it doesn't apply the same way, but you'll never be perfect with security. it's all about risk management, and it's about evaluating what's the risk. I mean, you've done this multiple times, even just on this episode, right? Oh, we classify our third-party software into tiers. We classify our servers into tiers. Yep. You know, I've heard of people saying, hey, we classify our employees into tiers of risk, that, you know, the chief financial officer is more risk than, you know, an MA that might be on the floor or something, right? And so it's interesting. Is that how you approach all of your cybersecurity, is saying, okay, what's the risk and what's the risk that we want to take, because we can't do everything?
Right. So the risk is at two different levels, right? You got the risk to the patient, which is our tier one system that we have to bring, for example, labor and delivery, or, you know, maternity. We need these people to be on the monitor, and we need to be able to get their information so we can treat them. So that's the risk to the patient. And then you also have the risk to the business. And for example, well, Kronos, you brought up Kronos earlier. Yep. Which was a major disaster, which, by the way, we treated obviously as a disaster because it hit us pretty hard. But we also did our exercise on what could we have done better during the, even though we had nothing to do with it, what could we have done better in reacting to the event. So yeah, we're looking at pretty much, you know, two different levels of risk.
Yeah. Well, I think Kronos hit most of healthcare, so you weren't alone with that. And I think there's a lot of lessons that are going to be learned. Ironically, we learned a lot from Katrina about disaster recovery, right? Hurricane Katrina, and there was all the sessions. I think we're going to have a whole series of sessions at those conferences your team's attending about what did we learn from Kronos ransomware and third parties. Yes. So that's fair. Cool. Well, we'd like to wrap up all our CIO podcast episodes with a little bit of career advice or career perspective. What's the best piece of career advice that you've been given?
Pretty much what I was saying in the beginning, which was I got a CIO who was also pretty big in mentoring his folks, and he sent me to conferences. I wasn't going to conferences as often as I wanted to, and that's one of the first things he did is, hey, you need to attend the HIMSS because it's technology and security, which you know, it's the biggest conference out there for that. So I say, you know, mentor your folks, develop them as much as you can. To me, that's really you make a mark, because if you ever have to leave, your people are better than they were when you started. So that to me, that's pretty important, right?
Yeah, we're kind of in the midst of all the health IT conferences in the fall. There's so many of them. Do you have any tips for people as they go to conferences on, you know, is it the sessions? Is it the networking? Is it the vendor relationship? Is it all of those things? Or how do you approach conferences to get the most out of them?
Well, for me, it's the speaking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense as we talked about.
Yeah, I just went to the HFMA, which is the financial conference in Atlantic City, and spoke over there for an hour on disaster recovery, actually, and business continuity. And but that's you know, that's to me. But you're right, absolutely. The networking is really important. The vendor relationship is pretty important also. And there are some excellent sessions. Hey, you know, I was speaking, so hopefully my session is pretty good. But
yeah, well, I think we all have a lot to learn from each other, right? I think that's the reality, especially in cybersecurity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Francois, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you sharing these insights and perspectives, your experience with cybersecurity and healthcare. And thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out at healthcareittoday.com or search for the CIO podcast by Healthcare IT Today on your favorite podcast application. Thanks, Francois.
Thank you. It was great meeting you and having this conversation. Thank you.